You try not to let it affect you, but obviously it does with any major chronic illness. You try not to let it dictate your life. So I suppose I try and live my life that it's trying to be positive, have a positive outlook. The whole principle behind dialysis is that it takes off any toxins, etc., that you build up between sessions. So you have to kind of watch what you eat and drink. So you're quite restricted in what you eat and drink. The big thing for me was, everyone talks about that whole thing about getting the call. For me, that happened in April 1997, the 12th of April. I was just an ordinary day, just doing laundry, and I got a call from the doctors in the Royal London saying that there was a kidney available for me. When I went up, I obviously had all the last minute tests just to see if I was compatible with having the kidney, if I was able to go ahead. So at the last minute they told me yes, all the tests have come through, it was all satisfactory. And the next day, which is Sunday, was the day of the London Marathon, I won't forget it. The doctor came up and told me that the kidney was actually, it was quite a small kidney. And I kind of looked at him and he said yes, that it was actually a child's kidney that had become available. That they would normally transplant the 2 kidneys, but because the other kidney had been so badly damaged, they were only able to use 1. So I went down to the operating theatre, and whilst the surgeons were inside just looking at the kidney, making sure all the anatomy and everything was okay to go ahead, I was kind of left on my own there for a while, and that was quite strange actually. And those kind of feelings going through your head, thinking, do you know, what that family was going through, that was hard, I must say, that was hard. And obviously it went ahead in the end, and thankfully everything went to plan. The organ lasted for 7 years. I suppose I was quite lucky, and that's relatively kind of 7 to 10 years of the usual time that it lasts for. I suppose kind of the last 2 years it was gradually declining. But I'm afraid it got to a stage where I was so sick that I was actually looking forward to starting back on dialysis. I mean, they use the term the Michelin Man. I literally was completely blown out with fluids. I had to start dialysis. I was on a continuous over a couple of days trying to get the fluids down, and the toxins, it has to be done over gradual. You can't go in and remove all the toxins all at once or your body would crash. It has to be done over a short period of time. So I suppose every day for about 3 or 4 days I was on it for about 8 hours a day, but the nausea was just overwhelming, just continuously getting sick, vomiting. I think I left hospital that time, I was down to about 8 stone. That stage, yeah. But I mean, I was glad just to get back onto dialysis at that stage. When anybody starts on dialysis, and after a period of time when your bloods etc. settle, and they do broach the subject with you about whether or not you want to go on the transplant list, there would be obvious tests that you have to have done, like ECGs, echoes. They do like cytotoxic, which is checking the amount of antibodies in your blood system. And once they're all okay and you fit the criteria, you would go on the transplant list. Nowadays, I suppose, realistically, you are waiting anything from 3 to 5 years. In my case, because I had a previous transplant, I had a lot of antibodies built up. So I actually had almost 100% antibodies, which is quite a substantial amount. When I was going up for my checks to Beaumont, they were telling me that initially that I would wait about 3 to 5 years, but then as time was going on, they were kind of saying that my antibody levels were kind of rising. So in the end they said that maybe a family member would be the most suitable for me. So 2 of my sisters went forward for testing, but unfortunately my antibody levels were at such a height that they couldn't go ahead. I suppose really it's quite hectic. I suppose starting on a Monday morning, you're kind of waking up at 6 o'clock, leaving the house at 7. I would start work at 8 and would do a 10.5 hour day. That's every Monday, Wednesday, Friday I work 10.5 hours. And then I suppose for most people, you say, are going home to relax after a hard day's work, I'm kind of facing into what I would say to a lot of my friends, my second job. I would start the treatment at 6:30, and you're spending the next 4 hours lying there having the dialysis treatment. Now people might say that you're what's wrong, you're lying down, you're relaxing, but it is actually quite a severe treatment. in that because you only have it 3 times a week, it's over a 4-hour period, you are having to pull all the, as I said, all the toxins and the fluid that you would have accumulated over the previous few days, having to take them off in that amount of time. So it can be quite severe. Unfortunately, in my case as well, I have also suffered from very low blood pressure, chronically low. So, I mean, I literally head down, legs up on oxygen for the whole treatment. And at the end of it, you're barely able to get out of the bed, feeling faint, nauseous. You're then having to face into taxi drive home for an hour with 4 other people. And more often than not, by the time I do actually get home, it's quite frequent that I would actually vomit when I get home then as well. And then you're trying to make it up the stairs to go to bed, and then having to get up for work again the next morning, 6 o'clock. So it is quite hectic. I suppose you can't really dictate to anybody about how they should feel or what they should think, particularly at a time, which a horrific time for an awful lot of families. And geez, I don't know how anybody actually goes through it. I suppose I'm not kind of directly involved with talking to families or anything like that, but from they would have to be in an ITU setting where they would have trained doctors, which would be very important that they would get to talk to the families if it is a case that's the outcome, that somebody is brain is dead, that there is no other outcome, that somebody would be properly trained to talk to the family, that they would be sensitive of their needs and know how to approach them. I think if a family has built up a good rapport with a doctor as well, that would be very important, that they know how to actually start to talk to the family, how to address the situation. If they do feel that there is a possibility that family do want to go through with organ donation, then the team from Beaumont, the transplant coordinators, would come down and go into it a bit more in depth. I do think it is very important though that everyone in the family is in total agreement that it should go ahead, that it's not a case afterwards of someone saying, oh, you made me do that, you know, you forced me into it, that everybody in the family is in agreement that it should go ahead, and that obviously that if where possible that they know that that was the wishes of the person, that they would have wanted their organs to be donated. A lot of people would donate blood and would have no qualms about it. And that they would give blood or accept blood. So I suppose I would like it to be a case that the whole giving of organ donation would, what let's say, be as taught about a topic and discussed a topic as giving blood, that people can see the benefits out of it. And I suppose in my case I can only say that, you know, the goodness that it gave me in the 7 years, the good quality of life that it gave me. I suppose the whole thing about the opt-out system, I would like to see that come in. I think that, again, that it would be up for discussion, that people would kind of talk about it a bit more. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, lastminute.com isn't on my user surveying thing. It's very hard, really. I mean, if you're going abroad, you have to give 3 months notice, which is quite a substantial period of time. Also, the fact that it is, you know, that it is a blood, you know, treatment, I suppose you have to be very careful where you go to. In a lot of countries, they would dialyse people with hepatitis and HIV in the same unit as other people. In Cork they don't, that they would be in isolated machines and they would have their own machine designated for that particular patient. So that would be a big factor really when you're travelling abroad. They would advise you to go to centres that would have the same standards as here in Ireland for that reason. Weekends away are okay. I mean, weekends in Ireland are alright, but going abroad you would want 3 months notice, yeah. For women it would be a much bigger issue. I suppose for me really is my kind of childbearing years have been taken up with being on dialysis. Now that's not to say that you can't have a family, but your fertility would definitely be affected. A lot of women would tend to have miscarriages, but some women do go on and have healthy babies. I suppose the other option then really you're looking at is adoption. If you're going for foreign adoption, it's kind of taking up to about 10 years of your life in paperwork and going through that whole process. And then the whole idea of having to go, if you do go to a particular country, you have to go over and complete all the documentation, and then you're looking at trying to do dialysis in countries like the Philippines or in Russia, and you're falling into the whole thing about safety for yourself having dialysis over there. The other option then would be fostering, where if it's a couple that want to foster, one of you would tend to have to give up to your job because you would have to be a full-time carer. And there's also the issue then as to whether or not they would actually allow you to foster if you have a long-term condition, because obviously you would have to give a lot of time to a particular foster child, and they themselves would have their own particular needs. So it's a huge issue, really. Definitely, I suppose the idea of being very tired, feeling sluggish, you kind of get a yellow complexion because of all the toxins building up in your system. In my case, I've had low blood pressure, I've had to have a parathyroidectomy, renal bone disease. I suppose with the lack of fluid, you can suffer from dehydration, so dryness of skin. Lots of things really, yeah. From my point of view, we got engaged in 2002 with the idea that we would initially get married 2004, but at that time I got sick and my transplant was failing, so then we said we'd put it off and we got married in 2006. During that time, we definitely thought at that stage that I would have got a transplant by that time, but in 2006 when it wasn't happening, we said, look, I'm not going to put my life on hold anymore, we'll just go ahead with the wedding. And I think now here I am 8 years later, still looking back and still no transplant. And I suppose at that time, if you thought you'd be that many years waiting, I don't know how you'd cope really. It's tough. And I mean, I'm sitting here now, I could be here in another 10 years, 20 years time, I might never get a transplant, I don't know. Two of my sisters said have got tested and went forward. The first girl, Jodie, when she went, she was full of hope, we thought, because we were told like a family member would be my best option. And when that kind of came back, I suppose she was totally devastated. I don't know, I suppose really it didn't, what will I say, it was kind of strange really, I suppose. In a way I was kind of saying in the back of my mind, oh, it's not going to go ahead, because there's so many, what will I say, no's in the past. But when the second girl then, Marie Louise, went and was getting that much further, the hope was kind of rising. Could it happen? Could this be it? And we'd actually gotten a date for last July for it to go ahead. But at the last minute, my antibody levels went up and was told, unfortunately, no, couldn't go ahead. So I suppose at this stage, I don't think I'll ever believe it until I'm actually sitting lying on the table. But even at that stage, I don't know if I'll think that it will go ahead, actually, to be honest with you.